Okay, greetings everyone. Thank you for tuning in to this very first episode of Careers at the Cutting Edge of Engineering. It's our panel discussion series. So this is being presented by the University of Southern California, the Viterbi School of Engineering. Today we'll be talking about careers in computer security and cybersecurity. I'm Sudha Kumar. I'm the director of the USC Viterbi India office, and it was my pleasure to introduce to you our very distinguished panelists. Dr. Clifford Newman is the director for the USC Center for Computer System Security. He received his SB degree from MIT and his PhD from the University of Washington. He worked on MIT's Project Athena, where he was a principal designer of the Kerberos authentication system, widely used today on all major computer systems for enterprise network login. Cliff, welcome. Our next panelist is Sridhar Jayanthi, a successful entrepreneur whose transformational company, Polylogics LLC, was acquired by Eclectic IQ, a Netherlands-based company, where he's currently driving the endpoint security business as Senior VP. He has had a long career in leadership roles in companies like FireEye and McAfee. He holds a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from the University of Madras and a master's degree in engineering from the State University of New York and Northwestern University. He's a great friend of the school and served in the past on the USC Viterbi India board. Welcome, Sridhar. Thank you for being here. Our third panelist is Candace House-Texera, Associate Dean, Corporate Engagement and Programs at USC Viterbi. Among her various other hats that she wears, she oversees the Engineering Career Center and will bring very valuable insights to this panel. She has served on the USC Viterbi Industry Advisory Board, the Corporate Council, and was a lecturer for the Information Technology program at USC. And as though she's not doing enough, she's also currently pursuing her doctorate in policy planning and development at USC. Welcome, Candace. Thank you for being here, all of you. So without further ado, I'm going to start with my question. And the first one I will address to Cliff Newman. Cliff, what is the difference between cybersecurity and computer security? And why are these areas important?
Well, we'll start with the first part of that question. In particular, there's not a real difference between cybersecurity and computer security per se, as those terms are applied today. Cyber simply means computer. But sometimes people refer to computer security using simply the one-word phrase cyber. Please don't do that. It leaves out the important component of the field, i.e. the security part. Now, there are some that consider cybersecurity to be more general, as it applies also to networking and to the systems and processes, for example, business processes that use computers, which today is really just about everything. Some might consider computer security to be the more technical discipline, with cybersecurity then expanding into the business and societal processes that utilize the technology. But it's important to understand that before the phrase cybersecurity was popular, the traditional discipline of computer security always focused on and encompassed those broader applications. And the basic takeaway is there's not a difference in the field per se. There are some differences in the particular programs that we're going to talk about later. But these areas are critically important, especially when we focus on the business and the societal implications of cyber hacks. We're hearing in the news every week about a major cyber hack. We've got projects here at USC where we are working on educating campaign and election officials and the implications of cyber attacks on society as a whole through these means becomes incredibly significant. And this is why it is so important that we focus and that we have individuals trained in defending our systems, whether those are the computer systems or the broader systems that are implemented using them.
Okay, Thank you, Cliff. So Twitter just got hacked and made the news very recently. So it seems like everything is hackable if there's a human involved. So is there a holy grail that computer scientists such as yourself in the computer security area aspire to? So what is the future of computer and cybersecurity?
Well, okay, so Twitter is just one of those organizations that got hacked. It's the one that's been most recently in the news. And by the way, I was on the local news talking about this just last week. As to there being a holy grail, no, there isn't. There is no system that is 100% secure. And there are no security defenses that are 100% effective. Computer security is about managing risks. And this involves developing and deploying multiple defenses. And this is what we call in the computer security industry is defense in depth. And each of these different defenses, we want to be effective in reducing the chances that an adversary will get in by some particular technique. But there are always going to be other techniques that they exploit. And just as importantly, we need to design our systems in ways that the consequences are reduced. This is something we call mitigating the threat. And things like this, you think of the withdrawal limits on your ATM, so that if someone manages to steal your identity and create a fake card, they can only get a limited amount of money, for example. In the power grid, mitigation involves having extra capacity in order to reduce the impact if a cyber-physical threat actually attacks the system. So what we need to do is mitigate the consequences when an adversary does get through our defenses. Now, there's lots of research in computer security today, both in universities and industries. In one of my current research activities, we're actually focused on cybersecurity for elections, and we have been teaching campaigns how to respond to these kinds of incidents. In other research activity, we're focused on security for the power grid, and our focus is in the allocation of resources in the grid to ensure resilience, even in the event of a coordinated cyber-physical attack. Another common theme in our university is security in federated systems. Now, the election system in the US is a federated system. The power grid in the US and Europe and many other countries is a federated system. And financial systems throughout the world are also federated systems. Part of this involves making sure that we can improve integrity of the data, the resilience of the systems, and we apply things like blockchain, sort of a buzzword that you probably heard a lot about, but it's important to understand how that can be applied and how it can't be applied. Now, there's some additional trends in the field that include application of AI in threat detection, and also applications of AI, or not so much applications to AI, of security in mitigating some of the threats of new kinds of attacks that can specifically attack AI systems, especially for things like autonomous vehicles. So there's a lot that's going on. No system is 100% secure. You need to apply defense in depth. Additionally, you need to design the systems around computers in a way that will be resilient despite the attacks that will inevitably occur, and at least in part that will inevitably succeed.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Cliff. So my next question is going to go to Sridhar. So what is the industry focusing on in terms of security? What is new and exciting over there?
Okay. Let me give a little bit of a history, and then I'll talk about what the trend is. So way back, before most of you were paying attention to cybersecurity, antivirus was created purely to stop the annoying hackers who wanted to just basically cause nuisance, and nobody really paid serious attention. When I got into cybersecurity in 2001, I was told by my friends, it's a dying field, what are you doing there, and things like that. And, once Microsoft fixes all their problems, you no longer have a job. Well, that's not at all where we are today. And somewhere around 2010, 2012, we started noticing, or I would say around 2006, we started noticing people were doing this for money. And people were doing this for industrial espionage, nations attacking each other. It really got very serious around 2005, 2006. And people started figuring out ways to get around antivirus. And in the last 10 years, or I would say less than that, it was very obvious that antivirus is pretty much very minimally effective. Maybe 30%, maybe 50%, depending on what kind of user you are. And we started really coming into situations. You might have heard of the Target attack way back about 6-7 years ago, maybe more, 10 years ago, when the attack happened almost 200 plus days before they discovered it. And that is the kind of scenario that I think had become much more common in the earlier this decade. And so people started saying, okay, if antivirus is going to stop me, what is it I need to do? I have to assume that we are under attack or we have already been breached. How do I figure this out as quickly as possible? So where we are today is I think Cliff mentioned it very well and said, you assume that you're going to be attacked and you assume the attackers are going to be successful. And what is the best technology you can use to figure that out as quickly as possible and mitigate as quickly as possible so that you don't lose tons of data before you actually wake up and say, oops, I lost tons of data. And data in the industrial world, money, in consumer world, this is really what we worry about. And the current technology is all about, we need experts to really figure out when something happens, something bad happens, you're breached. There is no antivirus kind of a solution where it says you are breached. There is no red flag that comes up, red light that comes up. So what's happened is in the industry, there is a need for more and more experts to really help interpret what's happening in a network, what's happening among the computers. And that has really caused a huge amount of shortage of the talent in the industry. And because of this, and because of the kind of losses that are happening, many companies have started turning to outsourcing security. So security, in the next 10 years, and this is partly what you see in the industry analysts, but also my prediction that in the next 10 years, 80% of the companies, maybe more in the US and around the world, will be outsourcing their security. Anybody who's serious about security, that's what I mean. And which means that they are really saying we cannot really hire and keep very expensive, highly talented people. We're going to really start outsourcing, and we really allow a smaller set of experts to take care of more number of companies instead of each company hiring their own experts. And that's the biggest trend that is going on right now in terms of what's happening in the industry. And within the technology, security technology side, the big trend is how do we help companies understand whether they are breached, how safe they are, what is their security posture as soon as possible, as soon as you are attacked. If you can do it within an hour, that's great. If you can do it within minutes, that's even better. But definitely, the number of days after they are breached, is reducing, the discovery number of a breach and the number of days it takes to discover that is really reducing rapidly. And that is where the big technology investments are happening. There is concepts of EDR and XDR, and I can talk about that. But right now, the key thing to understand is, people are applying artificial intelligence, machine learning approaches, as well as, many different technologies to quickly help people understand whether they are breached, and not always successful, but that's where we are headed right now.
Okay, that's very interesting. So if the outsourcing companies, are they going to be more of those coming up? So will the jobs kind of shift over there?
Jobs are not necessarily shifting because the security technology companies are still hiring because they got to create the technology. But a new set of companies are coming up, and even many of the existing vendors are turning into outsourcing companies. So you look at a company, like IBM, CrowdStrike, any one of these companies, all of them actually produce technology and also outsourced security. And I'm just giving you the big names because that's what everybody knows. But in reality, there are small regional ones, and there are small ones even within a town, which is managing, all the doctors and dental offices in the local village or city, things like that. And so they are called managed security service providers, MSSPs. And you're going to hear that word more and more over the next.
Wow, very interesting. So the next question is going to go to Candice. A lot of the attendees today are international students. And one of the questions that they would like to ask is, are the jobs in this area mostly for, do they require citizenship? So would international students be hired?
Yes, absolutely. So we have a number of our students who are on campus as F1 students or online as F1 students nowadays, participating in either internships via CPT, which means companies are hiring and knowing that these students are here under F1 status. And we also have a number of students that are getting hired full-time. So in terms of organizations, and I'm not sure if I'll share some of the numbers later, but there are definitely fields where there is a high need. And when there's a high need, the question of citizenship status kind of falls to the wayside. And there's definitely a high need in the security area. And so that is an area where we have both students from the United States and from outside of the United States being hired.
Wonderful. Thank you. The next question is to Cliff. A lot of the attendees today are students who are doing their bachelor's, so their BTech, like we call it in India. And while they may have a course or two in computer security, they will not have any experience in this field. What would you advise them to do to prepare for a MS or a PhD in these areas, or do they actually need to do anything at all? Cliff, I cannot hear you.
It is very useful to have real-world experience with networks and operating systems. These are the things that you'll be trying to secure, whether here or once you're out in a job after completing a degree here. And it's very useful to know basically how they operate. This experience, however, could be based on your own independent, quote, tinkering. Or based on work experience as an administrator. It can even be based on setting up and configuring your own home networks. Now, within the data science, MS, and cybersecurity engineering, the most important background is not specifically in security, but rather it's about the basic operations of the systems that you will be trying to secure. So if we've got students that are coming with a background in let's say, electrical engineering, or a background in, for that matter, even insurance, let's say we're talking about some industry that applies a lot of the most important thing is to really have the understanding of the problem domain to which you will be providing security, and less important to have the background specifically in security itself. Now, if you happen to have background in computer security or computer science, so much the better. but it is more important to have that background in the discipline where one will be applying the skills that you will be learning within this program.
Right. But they should know operating systems, like you mentioned, and other areas.
Well, it certainly is helpful, but we do have some programs that can help bring students up to speed. One of the things we look at, again, in our MS in cybersecurity engineering is students that may come from different backgrounds, such as, for example, public policy, sometimes even things like communication, sort of thinking about news and things like that. And in those cases, we don't expect those students to have the operating systems or even the networking background. We try to provide them with at least a basic level of understanding. But again, depending upon the track that you intend to go into following our program, that background doesn't need to be as technical as it might need to be in some other cases.
Fantastic. So the next question is to Sridhar. When someone is looking to start a career in the security industry, what skill sets are you looking for? I know Cliff mentioned operating systems and networks. What do you have to say about that?
Well, I totally agree. Having an understanding of how things work is the most important thing, because cybersecurity is evolving so rapidly. What I saw 10 years ago, I don't even recognize today, and things are changing rapidly. So having the basic skills and understanding of how computers work, operating systems work, networks work, how do they communicate? These will give you the basic foundation that you need. And depending on the field that you're going to, if you're going into, so I would broadly divide the jobs into 3 categories, right? Security technology. These are companies like McAfee, Symantec, even CrowdStrike, all of these companies that are building products. And then there is the security operations. MSSPs would belong in the security operations. They are the ones using the technology to solve the security problems. And then there's security consulting, right? The security consultants are much more of experts in deploying things and making all, fitting them all together and making it all work. It's parallel to many industries. You have that kind of, 3 different categories. And it depends on which field you're in. So if you're somebody who wants to purely be in coding, I would say you would probably more belong in the security technology space. You join one of the product companies. And if you want to be in that field, you got to learn coding. You got to be proficient in software development and testing and so on. But if you want to be in operations, really that previously what we said is extremely important. You got to know how things work before you can figure out whether you're looking at something that's not working, whether somebody is trying to hack into something and you see unusual behavior. For you to know unusual behavior, you need to know what is normal behavior. So that is a very important thing. And somebody who's put together their own computers, networks, and so on can be in consulting. Somebody who's understood the business side, people who have an MBA or a business side as well, can be in risk management, understand cyber risk. There is new industries like cyber insurance that's coming in, where technology and risk is all coming together. So there are so many different jobs, and I don't know if we'll come to it later, but I just put some stats together. There's something like next year there will be 3.5 million open security positions around the world. 3.5 million. Yeah, and about 2 million of those will be in Asia Pacific region, and about 400,000 in Europe, the rest in the US. And most of the time, these are going unfilled. They are very large numbers, and it's not a matter of pride that there are so many jobs. It's actually a matter to be alarmed about, because it's not like because there are no people, there's no crime happening. there is plenty of crime happening, right? So that's how I would put it, and I would also add that from a skill set point of view, like Cliff mentioned, somebody who's been independently taking certification classes or ethical hacking classes, has done reverse engineering, has been tinkering around, that shows up in an interview when you're talking, and that would be a very useful thing.
Yeah, no, that's very helpful, Sridhar. You actually answered my next question about do certifications help, and you mentioned that they do. Okay, so the students who are really passionate about doing research, they are looking to work in academia. They are the ones who go on and do a PhD. But if the plan is to get into a job in industry, is there any advantage to doing a PhD?
Well, I never say a PhD is wasted. I always think PhDs are good because there is always need for deeper thinking and deeper understanding of any subject. But it also depends on the field. If you're going to be in security operations, PhD is probably an overkill for majority of the people. There may be a couple of places, that could be useful still. But if you're going into applied cryptology, there is new fields coming up. Quantum computing is going to start becoming a reality at some point in the near future. And security in that era is going to be completely different. It is not even today possible to think about security in that era, right? I mean, there are many people already working on the cryptography side of quantum computing, but not a lot of other things that at least I know. But one of the biggest areas for PhD, I would suggest, is AI and machine learning areas. There is just very basic AI and machine learning being used in cybersecurity today. Most of the things you hear in the media is just marketing. And when you look deep into anybody's AI claims, it is very shallow, right? So there's a lot that needs to happen still.
Okay, that's great. So what advice, Sridhar, would you give to someone who has recently completed an undergraduate degree, has limited exposure to cybersecurity, and wants to make a career or pursue higher education in this field?
I first of all say, if you're interested in this field, pick the area or the kind of job you want. Like I said, cyber security technology, there's security operations and consulting. They all require different kinds of focus. And the best part about this industry is, if you're interested, it doesn't even matter what your background is, you can get into it. If you're interested in coding and you are interested in security technology, you can get into that even if your degree is not in cybersecurity necessarily. My boss at McAfee he was brilliant, and he had an anthropology degree, and it's for people who are really seriously interested. You can get into it, but in reality, people with an engineering background and a problem-solving background always have an advantage over the people who don't. And I would suggest, depending on the area you want to get in, go get a certification. It'll help you learn deeper, and also start tinkering with the various things that are out there. Pick something. There are many websites or meetups out there where you can actually take on problems and solve them just for the heck of it. In fact, there is Cyber Patriot in the US. I don't know if there is a similar one around the world, where you can start showing your interest way early in high school onwards. But if you're in college, you can still participate in that and really do well.
Okay. Oh, thank you. So there is one question that many of the people in the audience are worried about, and that is, how has the COVID situation affected this industry, and what do you see for the future?
Me?
Yeah, Sridhar.
Actually, I have not seen any change in the cybersecurity industry. You know, I would have actually thought there would be some impact, but some startups have been affected because they were out of money and they now need to raise money because their business plans have to be put on for 2 years. But otherwise, in the larger companies, I've never heard of anybody doing any layoffs because of COVID. There may be other reasons they're doing that. It is one of the industries that just keeps chugging along because, in my opinion, it's a very nascent industry. We haven't even started, maturing in the whole cybersecurity industry. If whoever gets in now will be getting in on the ground floor still, in my opinion.
Wow,
So
that would be a great relief. Yes, Cliff?
Yeah, I actually think there's a second part to that question. So Sridhar just answered the part about how has it affected perhaps hiring and jobs in the area. But from a perspective of the attacks that we're seeing, things have changed significantly. And part of the reason is more and more people are working at home. And because people are working at home, they're working outside sort of the quote secure perimeter of their organizations. This creates additional ways that adversaries can get into systems. And as a result, we've been having to do a lot more training of individuals to be aware of some of these kinds of things. So a lot of the things that are already demanded of security practitioners are now being demanded even more so because of the environments within which these systems are operating. So really, COVID and the pandemic has created a greater demand for security professionals. It has created a greater demand for security technologies. And it has raised the issues of certain things with respect to, let's say, privacy when we look at contact tracing and other kinds of things that now is gaining wider attention because of changes in the way that we do things.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's very true. So the next question is going to go to Candace. Candace, how do you help students with their internship or job search? What does the career office at USC Viterbi do? Would you like me to share your slides at this point?
That might be helpful. It's a lot of information, so the group might want to just see some of the services available.
Okay, just a second.
And while you're pulling that up, I'll just echo the comments on job opportunities during COVID. We shut down essentially in March, and students had summer internships already secured. In the area of security, those internships persisted and increased. So the number of CPT opportunities with Ericsson, Deloitte, PayPal, those are still happening, and they're still hiring for students for internships through fall. So we have not seen a shift in terms of students who are needing CPT have a change in opportunities, at least from the university career services perspective. So echoing what the two other panelists have shared, it's something we're seeing on the career services side as well.
That's great to hear. So I'll go to the second slide. Can you see it?
I can't, but I should know what my slides look like. So in terms of services, and I can't see it, but I'll just speak to it. So the team is really focused on making the connection. So it's not a placement office, but it's making sure that you have connections with all of the organizations that you need to find the type of opportunity. So that could be internship, that could be co-op or full-time. So there are traditional job boards, and this past year we had around 4,500 postings. There is a regular career fair or expo that is offered in the fall and spring semesters, and so that is hiring for internship and full-time opportunities. And we have 195 unique organizations that come to this fair. Something to mention is the School of Engineering is the only university in the United States that has a unique engineering career center. We also have a university career center, which would work with all disciplines, but it is very unique for a university to have a career center that focuses on supporting engineering and computer science students. So the 195 organizations chose to come to the engineering fair, which is a greater number than we have in our larger fair for the university. So just the number of companies is really speaking to the talent and the connections that companies are looking for. There are sessions called Trojan Talks. These are information sessions where companies come and present for an hour on opportunities that they have. And then there's a networking chance for all of the students where they can meet with the recruiters and share their CV and resume. And we had 102 sessions this past year. And there are a number of events and workshops that are offered to prepare you as a student for this whole process. So the US corporate culture of recruitment and recruitment just in general is very different from what you learn in a classroom. So we don't expect you coming into a university knowing how to find a job. Finding a job is another skill set altogether. And so this team is here to help you. So there are a number of workshops where you can go brown bag lunch, 45 minutes if you don't have class. These are also recorded for you, but understanding the CPT. What is CPT? We use that term all the time. How do you find an internship in the United States? What do you need to think about if you're trying to balance that as an academic student? Recruiting in the virtual environment. This is a new session because now everything is done like this. Webinars. So how do you need to think about your space? How do you present yourself? Developing resumes, CVs, and cover letters. So this is actually taking information from our corporate partners, them letting us know what needs to be improved. Things that students are thinking about that they're looking for. What are they skimming and scanning for, and how that should change by job description. Navigating the job search, how to market yourself, interviewing preparation. So the list goes on. But there are a number of special events. So there's boot camps where in one day you can just learn a little bit about this entire area, how to get hired. It's a series of workshops. And then for our graduate students, we have something called the Graduate Career Readiness Week. And it's right after orientation and right before classes start. When we know you're going to Target and getting ready to start classes, it's a good time to start to think about the job process. So there's a chance for you to start to connect with the Career Connections office and get started early before classes begin. And finally, there's a number of organizational sponsored events. So in the space of where you're working, there are tech talks, there are career panels just like this with various members from industry. We have coding challenges, we have hacker rank preparation sessions, game development forum. I mean, it goes on, but there are so many ways that you can connect within the School of Engineering with companies, whether it's networking or even if it's just applying for a job. If you're just at that point, you have everything ready. So I can't go into the list much more, but there's just a lot going on, many ways for you to engage, but really just starting at square. How do you get started? And you could just knock on the door and the team will help you.
Right. No, I know, Candace, you guys work so hard at and work towards the success of a student. So that's great. So that brings me to my next question. What kind of companies come to recruit on campus at USC?
Right. So I did pull some information and again, I just looked at a snapshot of last year. So we had 121 organizations that were specifically recruiting F1 students with a security or a cybersecurity master's degree. So these were 57 unique job postings. 65 of these companies attended our fair, and 20 of them actually came to campus physically to host these sessions. And so the next slides, it's a long list. And so we just wanted to share just some of the companies that have been on campus this past year, specifically to recruit students in this discipline. So feel free to scroll through, but we thought it would be helpful to see. Now, the companies are located all around the United States. We also have companies from outside of the US who recruit. Some of our students were placed in internships in Saudi Arabia, South Korea. So it really is a global approach. A lot of our alumni will connect with our students and have opportunities around the world. So if there isn't a company on this list, they just might not have participated last year. This is not the exhaustive list of everyone who recruits, but this is really last year who knocked on the door saying we were looking for students with a Master's of Science in Computer Security or Cybersecurity Engineering.
Well, this is a very impressive list, Candace. So does location play an important role when students are looking for either internships or jobs after graduation? This is, oh, I'm sorry, I think Sridhar is saying something.
Nope.
No, okay. So does the location of the university play any role when people are looking for jobs?
Well, I would have to say there are a number of opportunities in Los Angeles. So the fact that our students are able to pursue internships while they're also engaged in fall or spring semester is huge. There are other, universities that just don't have the corporate organizations around them physically. So where we are in Los Angeles is makes it very easy for our students to actually find internship opportunities and full-time opportunities near the university. But a number of the opportunities in this area are also in Northern California, and that is just an hour flight away. And so when we look at the numbers of where students are actually going for internships, which we know that has to be shared with us, a number of those internships were in San Francisco, San Jose. And so the students for the summer just relocated for a bit. And this summer, students were virtual. So we have students that are working for Goldman Sachs were planning to be in New York, but they're actually seated at a computer like this and never left their apartment. So the transition that a number of these companies made virtually was huge. But I do have to say, just being in Los Angeles really opens the door for connections. A number of these companies happen to be in LA on business and just say, hey, can we stop by the center? We're willing to do interviews. And just being that hub for their business and just how they work brings them to campus more often.
Fantastic. Thank you, Candice. So my next question will go to Cliff Newman, and I want him to talk about the two programs that we have at USC Viterbi in this area. So we have two master's programs. One is an MS in CS, Computer Security. Let me just get the slide going correctly. So one is the MS in Computer Science, which in Computer Security, and the second one is MS in Cybersecurity Engineering. So I just want Cliff to kind of tell us what the difference between these two master's programs is. Did we lose Cliff?
No, he's on mute.
Oh, Cliff, you may be on mute.
Yes, I was on mute.
Okay.
Hopefully you won't hear the lawnmower in the background, but there is definitely a difference between the two particular programs. That is between the MS in computer science with the specialization in computer security as compared with the second one that you listed, the Master of Science in Cybersecurity Engineering, which is within the data science program at USC, and that is still managed within the computer science program. The difference is that the Cybersecurity Engineering program is focused more on security practice, that is, as it is applied to various fields. And when one completes the MS in Cybersecurity Engineering, all of the classes that you take are related to some aspect of security, and you develop the skills and especially the intuition needed to build, analyze, deploy, operate, administer, and set policy for securable systems. By the way, that was basically the three different job tracks that Sridhar discussed before. You'll also, in that particular program, learn about the public policy and the societal issues that are created by computer security technologies. Now, that is as compared with the MS in computer science with the specialization in computer security. That one is perhaps better for those interested in developing systems or conducting technical research on security-relevant topics. That program is, as it sounds, a computer science master's program. And as such, it requires all of the core classes relevant to system development and to other aspects of computer science. And that leaves really only room for two security-specific classes. They will be exposed to security in the other classes, but their focus is more on program development in the traditional computer security disciplines. So as a result, there's really only room for a few dedicated security classes in that. And that's very important to give you the right mindset when you go out working for these companies that are developing security technologies. It's also very important for developing the right mindset when you're going to apply all of your computer science development skills in furthering research, if that's the track that you're going to take. But it is very different in terms of its focus because you end up spending a lot of time on the core computer science curriculum as well. And that might give you maybe a little bit of a better leg up for those employers that are looking not just for computer security skills, but also want to see the sound program development skills that are covered in that other program.
Okay. So I noticed that you in the computer security engineering MS program, you teach security policy and how policy drives technology decisions. Why is this important? And do you also teach the tools?
So policy defines what is and isn't allowed by computers. Without policy, there are no rules for a system to correctly implement it. In fact, one definition of a secure system is that the system correctly implements the relevant policies. So without policy, there can't be security. Now, in addition, there are certain aspects of our program where we focus on, quote, the public policy issues. The public policy issues with respect to computing and security. And in particular, we discuss things like privacy laws, legislation, encryption policy, content filtering, and other aspects of security that vary in different jurisdictions. And we discuss different perspectives on these public policy issues. So that's why policy is so important, but there are these two kinds of policy. One is the rules that are implemented by computers, and then the other is public policy, the rules that are dictated through legislation, through ethics, and other aspects. Now, regarding the second aspect of your question, regarding the use of tools, in our general cybersecurity curriculum, we focus more on system issues and the kinds of solutions that are available and how they can be applied. You will end up using some commercial products to illustrate some of these concepts, but we don't go and teach the, quote, user's manual of individual tools. Tools change all the time, and we want you to better understand what different classes of tools can do, and maybe more importantly, what they can't do, and how to apply them rather than the details of things like tool syntax. Tool syntax, that's something you should be able to pick up from a user manual or vendor-provided training. One important insight that we do want you to learn is how to spot fake claims by tool vendors. Once you're working in this field, you're going to have salespeople contacting you all the time, trying to sell you their product, which they will claim solves all your computer security problems. Don't believe them. In our program, you will develop the intuition to understand what solutions can and can't do, and how to assemble the different technologies to provide a stronger defense to your systems, again, following that defense in depth that I mentioned earlier.
Fantastic. So in the MS in cybersecurity engineering program, someone with, say, a chemical engineering background or electrical engineering background can apply and get into this field. Is that correct?
Yes, certainly. Those in different disciplines can apply and get into this field, especially in the data science MS for cybersecurity engineering. It's understanding of their own particular problem domain that is most important. And if you're a chemical engineer, what you need to do is understand process control. If you're an electrical engineer, understanding the system's response to electrical perturbations might be more important than, let's say, your programming. You don't have to have a computer science background. Having an engineering background is quite useful. If you're going down certain other tracks, maybe having a public policy background or a business school background might be the thing that is more important.
Okay. For this program, the MS in computer science, in computer security, it would be hard with a non-CS background.
Certainly with the MS in computer science, with the specialization in computer security, it would be difficult with a non-CS background. And part of the reason is that you've got the core computer science curriculum, the requirements in terms of algorithms, in terms of programming, in terms of other things that fit into the core. That is, the majority of the classes before you end up taking those two that might be computer security. It's not impossible. If you have an electrical engineering background, yeah, it's probably doable. If it's in other areas where you don't have even an engineering background, that MS in computer science is going to be difficult.
Right. So if people want to find out more about these programs, you can go to uscengineer.com or the website given below. You can just take a snapshot of this. Or you can write to me, sudha.kumar@usc.edu. So after this, I'm going to ask you one more question, Cliff. Sridhar talked about the connection of AI and machine learning to computer security. So can you also give the academic perspective on that?
Certainly. So one of the trends that we see in computer security research is melding and combinations with the innovations that have been going on in machine learning, artificial intelligence. Now, those interactions occur in two directions. Okay, so in one direction, we see the application of AI and machine learning in order to process the significant amounts of data that are generated by logging and audit mechanisms throughout a computer security system. And this is used to detect attacks, detecting attacks that are usually anomalous in one form or another. Sridhar already mentioned that understanding a baseline so that you can tell when things are different than the normal operation is important. And one of the ways that you do this is through various machine learning techniques, various data mining techniques, various AI techniques. Now, the second interaction that we see with artificial intelligence is there are actually certain attacks that are created and enabled by the use of certain machine learning technologies. In particular, one of the things that we've seen is this new area of adversarial machine learning. This is issues of how one might sort of pollute the learning models. That is, create training data that can insert, in essence, backdoors in the responses that will be provided. So one good example of this that's been demonstrated is you train machine learning systems and visualization systems that are used for autonomous vehicles so that when they see a street sign that says, let's say, what the speed limit is, they're designed to interpret what that is and change the behavior of the vehicle based on what those laws are. But there are certain kinds of adversarial machine learning that can be applied actually train the system so that the mere placement of, let's say, a Post-it note on a stop sign causes the machine learning system and the visualization system to interpret that stop sign as instead a speed limit 90 sign and has just the opposite effect. So that's where we see attacks on machine learning, attacks on artificial intelligence that are enabled by really the adversarial mindset that attackers apply in computer security.
Thank you. So I've pretty much come to the end of the questions that I have, but before we close this panel, maybe I'd like to go to each of the panelists and maybe each of you can give the students who are listening in a piece of advice that you may have about how to go about in this field. Candice, can we go with you first?
Yes. My piece of advice is wherever you go, start thinking about the job and career search process as soon as you step foot or begin in courses, because those connections will start early and start having conversations, go to sessions, go to workshops. This will help you prepare for when you truly are ready for that internship. Don't wait until it's time for an internship. Don't wait until a month before graduation. Start the process now. Speak to your faculty members, connect with career connections, connect with your network, and they will help you through the process because this field is definitely in demand.
Great. Thank you, Candice. Sridhar, what about you?
So Sudha, before I do that, can you give me an idea, like audience, are they already students of undergrad or are they potential students?
So I think many of them are undergraduate students currently doing BTech. Some of them are working professionals who are planning to study further. So we have students from all over India as well as from many other parts of the world as well.
Okay, great. Well, so my advice to them based on my 20 years in cybersecurity is it is a field that, you know, keeps on giving in terms of just as a career. It is, I've never heard of anybody not being able to find a job in this field. So from that point of view, it's a very exciting field. Purely looking at it from a job perspective, and what you need to do to prepare for that is really be interested genuinely in the field and pursue other than just academic activities in this field, which means that joining some cybersecurity clubs, meetups and things like that, and get some certifications on the side, not because they will help you, you can show some certificate, but it is really because that will open up your mind about what this field is all about and help you understand where this is going. You know, the number of jobs in every country, I think in India, within Asia, India has one of the highest jobs in cybersecurity. And this is a field that there is going to be a shortage in talent for at least the next 10 years. So I would say, you know, just be curious about it and be active and try to do extracurricular activities in this area, apart from having some fun in college as well.
For sure. So Cliff, what about you?
Well, you know, I think one thing sort of following up on what Sridhar was just saying, computer security is an interesting discipline in that the worse we do at our job, the more in demand we will be. But I think the real takeaway that I want to provide is that the main goal of a computer security education is to develop the intuition about computer security. And that in some sense involves putting yourself into the mindset of an adversary. Okay. The most important things that you will have coming in to working on such a degree is an understanding of the baseline system, that is the systems that you are trying to secure, rather than the technologies that you will apply. We'll give you the background on those technologies if you understand how they fit together. You need to come in with a basic understanding of the system that you are trying to secure, and hopefully we will help you develop that mindset to think like an adversary and to develop the intuition you need.
Thank you. So I see that we have a few questions from the audience. Candice or maybe Cliff, I'm not sure, but this question says, how do prospective jobs of MS in computer security graduates differ from those of MS in cybersecurity engineering? How do the jobs differ? Is that you, Candice, or is that you, Cliff? Cliff, go ahead.
So for those with the MS in computer science with the specialization in computer security, those are individuals in terms of their job prospects that will be going more into program development and software development and technology development roles at some of the major companies, as well as those that might be going on for a PhD or research in the area. Those that are in the MS in Master of Science in Cybersecurity Engineering may also go to certain organizations that are doing development, but they will also go into those organizations providing operations. We've had a number of our students go on and work for Amazon Web Services, for example. quite a number of other major organizations as well. We also have a lot of students in those particular programs that go off working for consultancies, where they're going to go advise other organizations on the operations and deployment of things. And then, of course, we also have quite a number that go into, well, our own defense industries and other defense industries. In those cases, there may be some citizenship requirements. But it is a different kind of job that the Master of Science in Cybersecurity Engineering group is going into. More operations and deployment and consulting versus the MS in computer science with the specialization, which is more straight software development, engineering, and ultimately research.
Okay, Candace, you want to add something to that?
I did, and I'm just going to add just some of the job titles that were shared from students that were hired from the different disciplines. So the cybersecurity engineering students, similar to what Professor Newman was sharing, were forensic examiners, technology risk management analysts. So a lot of examining analytical type of positions, where the CS computer security students were hired as computer scientists and software engineers, focusing on security for those organizations. So there are a number of titles that our students share, but we've noticed that students in the cybersecurity engineering space tend to have more of analyst positions, risk management positions, forensic examiners. Those are very recurring job titles that are going into that field, just to add.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, we've come to the end of our session. It's been a very quick 1 hour. So I thank all the panelists for being here and spending their valuable time. To all the attendees, I hope you found this session extremely helpful. And please stay safe, everybody. So yeah, it's a crazy world right now, and I hope everybody stays home and stays safe. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Sridhar. Thanks, Cliff. Thanks, Candace.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.